The council chamber stretched high above the floor where Jake Morrison stood. Thousands of alien representatives filled the seats around him, their forms ranging from small floating creatures to massive beings that needed special platforms. The air smelled strange, filtered and recycled to accommodate hundreds of different species. Jake had been coming to these meetings for 3 years now, and he was tired of it all. Behind him, Ambassador Lisa Grant sat with perfect posture, her face calm despite the anger Jake knew she felt. They had come here today with evidence, real evidence that could not be ignored. The holographic displays floating above the chamber floor showed burning cities, destroyed homes, and bodies. So many bodies. The Krell Dominion had destroyed 47 civilizations in less than 2 years. They took what they wanted and killed anyone who resisted. The Varani people had been peaceful farmers and artists. Now their worlds were empty, turned to glass by Krell weapons. The few survivors lived in refugee camps, their culture destroyed. Jake pressed the button to speak. His voice echoed through the vast chamber, translated into 1,000 languages by the council computers. He showed them everything. Pictures of Krell soldiers forcing children into mines, videos of orbital bombardments that killed millions in seconds, testimony from survivors who watched their families die. "This cannot continue," Jake said, his voice steady but hard. "The Krell must be stopped. They will not stop on their own. Every day we wait, more innocents die." The Thaxian ambassador, a tall creature with blue skin and too many arms, made a dismissive gesture. "The human speaks with passion but without wisdom. Earth is young. You have traveled the stars for only 200 years. You do not understand how complex galactic politics can be." Other ambassadors nodded their agreement. They spoke about trade agreements and historical treaties. They talked about the difficulty of military action and the importance of patience. They used many words to say nothing at all. Finally, the vote came. Jake watched the display as the results appeared. Economic sanctions against the Krell, a strongly worded statement of disapproval, a promise to meet again in 6 months to discuss further action. It was the same result as every other vote for 3 years. Jake felt something break inside him. He looked at the alien representatives with their comfortable seats and safe worlds. None of them were in danger. The Krell attacked weak civilizations on the Outer Rim, far from the Council's protected core worlds. These politicians could afford to wait and debate because their own families were safe. Lisa stood up gracefully. She thanked the Council for their time, her voice showing none of her real feelings. She and Jake walked out of the chamber together, their footsteps echoing in the long corridor outside. Once they were in the private transport heading back to Earth's embassy, Lisa finally let her mask drop. She pulled out her personal communicator and began typing. Jake watched as she composed a message to be sent back to Earth through the quantum relay network. The message would arrive instantly, traveling faster than light itself. Lisa showed him what she had written before sending it. "Request denied. Recommend autonomous action. Humanity will handle this ourselves." Jake nodded slowly. They both knew what this meant. Earth would act alone, without the Council's permission or support. It was a decision that would change everything. The message reached Earth minutes later. In Geneva, deep beneath the city in a secure bunker, President Helen Carter read Lisa's words. Around the table sat the most powerful people in Earth's military. Fleet Admiral Eric Stone commanded all human ships in space. General Ryan Webb led the Marine Corps. Director Amy Chen ran strategic intelligence. These people had been preparing for this moment. "Show me what we have," President Carter said quietly. Admiral Stone activated the wall display. Numbers and ship classifications filled the screen. Jake would have been shocked to see them. The public believed Earth had perhaps 100 warships for defensive purposes. The truth was very different. 600 warships filled the shipyards of Luna, Mars, and the asteroid belt. The newest ones were Vengeance-class dreadnoughts, massive ships with armor thicker than any building and weapons that could destroy a city from orbit. 30,000 fighter craft waited in carrier bays. 200,000 Marines trained in facilities hidden across the solar system. Earth had been building this fleet in secret for years. Not because they wanted war, but because they feared the Council would never act when action was needed. The derelict alien ship found 40 years ago in the Kuiper Belt had given human scientists technology they were never supposed to have. Shields that could stop energy weapons. Engines that could push ships faster than anything else in the galaxy. Weapons the Council had banned as too dangerous. President Carter looked at each person around the table. They were asking her to commit Earth to war against an enemy that had conquered 47 worlds. It was a decision that would cost lives, human lives. But the alternative was to do nothing while genocide continued. Authorization Code Alpha 7 Omega, Carter said clearly. Operation Righteous Fury is approved. Show the galaxy what happens when humans decide to handle things ourselves. The military leaders saluted and left to begin their work. Within hours, messages flashed across human space. Every ship captain received recall orders. Every Marine was told to report to duty stations. Every pilot climbed into their fighter for final checks. The largest military mobilization in human history had begun. In the Krell home system, War Master Vex received reports of the Council vote with satisfaction. He stood in his command center, looking at displays that showed Krell forces spread across dozens of systems. His species had ruled through strength for 10,000 years. They had crushed every enemy they faced. These humans were no different. They had debated and discussed for 3 years while the Krell grew stronger. They would do nothing, just like all the other weak species that bowed before K 3 weeks after the Council's useless vote. A Krell battle group simply vanished. Admiral Ben Crawford stood on the bridge of the UHSF Liberty, watching his displays with calm focus. Around him, 40 human warships hung in space, completely invisible to enemy sensors. The stealth technology was something Earth had developed in secret, bending detection waves around their hulls like water flowing around a rock. They had jumped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Korvax system. The Krell were there, preparing to attack another defenseless world. Their ships formed up in standard attack patterns, confident and careless. They had no idea death was watching them. Ben gave the order with a simple hand gesture. The Liberty's main railgun fired first, sending a solid tungsten slug downrange at 30% of light speed. The projectile crossed the distance in heartbeats and punched straight through the Krell flagship's shields like they were paper. The enemy ship broke apart, atmosphere and bodies exploding into space. Then all 40 human ships opened fire at once. The Krell never had a chance to react. Their sensors showed nothing until the railgun slugs started tearing through their hulls. Explosions blossomed across their formation as ship after ship died. A few Krell captains managed to return fire, but they were shooting blind, hoping to hit something they could not see. The battle lasted 14 minutes. 32 Krell warships became expanding clouds of debris. Not one human ship took serious damage. Before Krell reinforcements could arrive, Ben's fleet jumped back into faster-than-light travel and disappeared. No warnings. No chances to surrender. No mercy. In his command center on Drakthor, War Master Vex studied the reports with growing confusion. His best analysts tried to explain what had happened, but they had no answers. The attacking ships left no identification signatures. The weapons were unlike anything in the Council databases. Whoever hit his fleet knew exactly where to aim and when to strike. Vex issued orders for increased patrols and better sensor coverage. He told himself it was probably pirates, or maybe an insurgent group with stolen weapons. He was wrong about that. Captain Emma Rodriguez led her fighter squadron on a mission 2 days later. Her 12 pilots flew ships even smaller than the stealth frigates, designed for deep penetration into enemy territory. They dropped out of faster-than-light travel inside a Krell supply depot, their weapons already hot. Kate Sullivan, flying on Emma's wing, took out the depot's communications array with a single missile. That meant no distress call. Chris Baker, the youngest pilot in the squadron, destroyed the defense satellites with precise railgun fire. That meant no resistance. The squadron spent 8 minutes systematically destroying fuel tanks, ammunition bunkers, and supply ships. By the time they left, the depot was a field of wreckage. The Krell stationed there were dead, and months of supplies were gone. Colonel Dan Harper watched from Earth as the reports came in. His intelligence team had planned every raid carefully, choosing targets that would hurt the Krell the most. Supply convoys disappeared in empty space. Communication relays went silent. Forward operating bases were reduced to craters. Each attack was quick, brutal, and effective. The Krell tried to respond. They increased escorts for supply ships. They installed better sensors at their bases. They even tried to lay traps, parking damaged ships in space to see if the mysterious attackers would investigate. None of it worked. The human ships seemed to know where every Krell force was located. They struck where the enemy was weakest and vanished before reinforcements arrived. It was like fighting ghosts, if ghosts had railguns and no concept of mercy. On Earth, most people had no idea a war was happening. News reports talked about increased defensive patrols along human borders. They showed footage of warships conducting exercises. Director Amy Chen made sure no combat videos reached the public. This was a secret war, fought in the darkness between stars. But not everyone was blind to what was happening. The Varani refugees, scattered across neutral space stations, began receiving anonymous supply drops. Medical equipment appeared at their camps. Weapons, human-designed rifles that were simple to use but devastatingly effective, arrived in unmarked containers. The Varani resistance leader, an elder named Kessa, held one of the rifles and understood. Someone was helping them fight back. Someone wanted them to survive. The weapons had no markings, no identification, but Kessa recognized the gift for what it was. Hope. The Krell losses mounted steadily. 15 supply convoys destroyed. 8 forward bases obliterated. 3 troop transports ambushed during faster-than-light travel. Their crews killed before they even knew they were under attack. War Master Vex studied the pattern and finally understood. This was not random piracy. This was organized warfare conducted by someone who understood Krell tactics better than the Krell themselves. He called a meeting of his senior commanders. They gathered in his war room, surrounding a holographic display that showed all the attacks. Red marks indicated losses, spreading across Krell-controlled space like a plague. "We are being hunted," Vex said, his voice harsh with anger and something else. Fear, perhaps, though he would never admit it. "Someone has declared war on us, and we do not even know who they are." His intelligence chief, a scarred veteran named Grath, pointed at the tactical data. The attack patterns suggest a highly trained military force. The weapon signatures do not match any council species. The level of coordination indicates excellent command and control. "Could it be the humans?" someone asked. The room fell silent. Then Vex laughed, a sound like metal scraping stone. "The humans debate in council chambers. They are soft, civilized. They would never have the strength for this kind of warfare." But doubt had entered his mind. 3 years ago, the human ambassador had warned them. He had shown them evidence and demanded action. The council had voted for sanctions. What if the humans had decided to act alone? No, Vex told himself. It was impossible. Humans were a young species, barely 2 centuries in space. They did not have the technology or the will for systematic warfare. He was wrong about that too. General Ryan Webb reviewed casualty reports in his office on Luna. The numbers told a story of incredible success. Human losses: 12 fighters, 1 corvette, 43 personnel. Krell losses: over 8,000 personnel, hundreds of ships, critical infrastructure across 9 systems. The exchange ratio was better than anyone had predicted. But Webb knew this phase could not last forever. Eventually, the Krell would adapt. Eventually, the galaxy would figure out who was behind the attacks. When that happened, humanity needed to be ready for open war. He opened a secure channel to Admiral Stone on Earth. "Sir, I recommend we move to the next phase. The Krell are confused but not broken. It's time to show them that humanity doesn't just fight in shadows." Admiral Stone agreed. New orders went out to the fleet. The stealth campaign had done its job, destroying Krell logistics and spreading fear. Now it was time for the hammer blow. Time to show the galaxy that Earth's military was not just competent, but overwhelming. Captain Emma Rodriguez received the new orders while her squadron was refueling at a hidden supply depot. They would join the main battle fleet for a full-scale engagement. No more hit-and-run attacks, no more hiding. The time for stealth was ending. The time for open battle was beginning. She gathered her pilots in the briefing. Rho Proxima Junction was a crossroads in space, a system where faster-than-light travel lanes intersected. Control it, and you controlled access to 12 populated sectors. The Krell had turned it into a massive staging area, gathering ships for their next wave of conquests. Admiral Eric Stone stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display. 140 human warships hung in space around him, arranged in perfect formation. The three Vengeance-class dreadnoughts, Retribution, Defiance, and Indomitable, formed the tip of the spear. Behind them came cruisers, destroyers, and carriers loaded with fighters. Intelligence reports confirmed that War Master Vex himself was in the system, overseeing preparations. That made this target even more valuable. Cut off the head, and the body would stumble. "All ships, prepare for transition," Stone said calmly. "We jump in 60 seconds." The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect synchronization. One moment, empty space. The next moment, the largest human battle fleet ever assembled appeared at the edge of Proxima Junction. Jake Morrison, now serving as Fleet Communications Officer, opened channels on all frequencies. He broadcast in clear galactic standard so every Krell ship would hear. "Attention, Krell forces. You have made war on innocent people. You have ignored every call for peace. Earth has heard the galaxy's cries for help. The Council will not act, so we will. Surrender now, or be destroyed." On his flagship, War Master Vex stared at his displays in disbelief. Human ships. Hundreds of them, appearing without warning in the middle of Krell-controlled space. He had been wrong. So wrong. These were not the soft diplomats who debated in council chambers. These were warriors, and they had come for blood. Vex did what any Krell would do. He ordered his ships to open fire. The battle began with a storm of missiles from both sides. The Krell fired first, launching thousands of warheads at the human fleet. But the human point defense systems were ready. Computer-controlled lasers and railguns tracked each incoming missile with perfect precision. 98% of the Krell missiles died before reaching their targets. The few that got through exploded against shields that barely flickered. Then the human dreadnoughts fired their main guns. The railgun slugs, each one weighing several tons and moving at incredible speed, crossed the distance in seconds. The Krell shields, designed to stop energy weapons, were useless against solid projectiles traveling at relativistic velocity. The first volley punched through 3 Krell battleships like they were made of paper. The massive enemy vessels broke apart, their reactors exploding in brief bright stars. Captain Emma Rodriguez led her fighter wings into the chaos. Her pilots moved with perfect coordination, their quantum-linked communication systems allowing them to act as one organism. Every time a Krell fighter moved to attack, 3 human craft were already there, weapons firing. Lieutenant Chris Baker flew like he was born in a cockpit. His fighter danced through enemy fire, his railguns speaking in short, precise bursts. Each burst meant one less enemy. He had 12 confirmed kills in the first hour, and he was not slowing down. The Krell discovered something terrifying. Human warships were armored with composite materials they had never seen before. Krell plasma cannons, weapons that could melt through the hulls of council ships, barely scorched the human armor. The humans had come prepared for this fight in ways the Krell could not match. General Paul Henderson's Marines prepared to board 3 Krell carriers. Their assault shuttles were ugly, brutal machines designed for one purpose: punching through enemy hulls. The shuttles hit the carrier sides at high speed, cutting lasers burning through armor like it was butter. The Marines poured through the breaches in their powered armor. Each suit multiplied a human's strength 10 times and was armored heavily enough to stop most weapons. The Krell soldiers were tall, nearly 3 meters, with natural armor plating. It did not matter. The human Marines moved through the corridors systematically, clearing deck after deck. Sergeant Victor Kane led his squad through tight corridors filled with smoke and emergency lighting. A Krell soldier charged at him, massive and terrifying. Victor shot it twice in the chest, the heavy rounds from his rifle punching through the alien's natural armor. The Krell fell, and Victor kept moving. There was no time to think about what he was doing. There was only the mission. Admiral Ben Crawford commanded the flanking force. His ships had circled around the battle, using the system's asteroid field for cover. Now they emerged directly behind the Krell formation, cutting off any chance of retreat. The Krell were trapped in a perfect envelope with human ships on all sides. The space between the two fleets became a hell of laser fire, railgun slugs, and exploding ships. But the battle was already decided. Human technology was better. Human tactics were superior. Human determination was absolute. 6 hours after the battle began, War Master Vex realized he was beaten. His flagship's shields were failing. Fires raged through 3 decks. Half his fleet was destroyed, and the rest were being systematically hunted down. He opened a channel to Admiral Stone. "What are you?" Vex demanded, his voice rough with pain and anger. "What kind of species builds weapons like this? The Council said humans were peaceful, civilized." Admiral Stone's face appeared on Vex's screen, cold and hard. "We are peaceful. We are civilized. We sought peace for 3 years while you murdered billions. We tried diplomacy while you laughed. We gave you every chance to stop. You chose war. Now you understand what humans become when we say we'll handle things ourselves?" Vex wanted to respond, but his flagship's reactor went critical. The explosion consumed the massive ship in an instant, vaporizing everything inside, including the War Master who had led the Krell for 50 years. The remaining Krell ships tried to scatter, but human pursuit groups chased them down one by one. Some Krell captains tried to surrender. Most were allowed to do so. Their ships boarded and crews taken prisoner. A few chose to fight to the death, and the humans obliged them. When the battle finally ended, the Krell fleet was gone. 70,000 enemy personnel were dead. 15,000 more were prisoners. The system that had been their staging area was now controlled by human forces. Human losses were light by comparison. 9 ships destroyed, 212 personnel killed. The victory was total and absolute. Automated monitoring stations scattered throughout the system had recorded everything. Within hours, footage of the battle spread across the Galactic Information Network. Species on hundreds of worlds watched in shock as humans, the young race that barely rated attention, destroyed a Krell fleet that had conquered 47 civilizations. The Galactic Council convened in emergency session. The tone was very different from the last time they had discussed the Krell problem. The Thaxian ambassador, who had dismissed human concerns weeks ago, now demanded explanations. How had Earth built such a fleet? Why had they attacked without Council approval? Ambassador Lisa Grant attended via hologram, her expression calm and controlled. She let the Council members shout and demand for several minutes before speaking. "We explained ourselves 3 weeks ago," she said quietly. "We told you the Krell needed to be stopped. You voted for sanctions and more meetings. We decided to implement a more permanent solution." The Council erupted. Accusations flew, threats were made. Species demanded that Earth be censured, sanctioned, even expelled from the Council. Lisa waited patiently until they ran out of breath. Earth is no longer requesting Council approval. The Krell Dominion, shocked by their defeat at Proxima Junction, mobilized everything they had. For the first time in centuries, they called upon their oldest warrior traditions. They issued a declaration that sent chills through the galaxy. Extinction-level warfare against humanity. No prisoners, no mercy, no survival. Earth's response was simple and broadcast across all frequencies. Accepted. What followed was 6 months of the most brutal fighting the galaxy had seen in thousands of years. Fleet Admiral Eric Stone divided the human armada into 3 groups. The Northern Fleet, commanded by Admiral Ben Crawford, moved to liberate occupied worlds along the Krell expansion corridor. The Southern Fleet, now under Admiral Kate Sullivan, struck at Krell mining operations and industrial centers. The Central Fleet, led by Stone himself, drove straight toward the Krell home system. Each liberation followed a pattern. Human ships arrived in orbit. They broadcast surrender terms. Any Krell forces that resisted were destroyed without hesitation. Freed populations watched in amazement as human Marines deployed not just weapons but food, medicine, and construction equipment within hours of securing the planet. The Varani were the first to be freed. When Admiral Crawford's ships appeared in orbit over their surviving colonies, the refugees could not believe it. The humans had come. The humans who had tried to help them in the council, who had been ignored, had come with warships and fury. Elder Kessa met with Colonel Dan Harper, who now commanded the alien auxiliary forces. She offered everything the Varani had left: their people, their resources, their loyalty. Harper accepted the offer of volunteers and began training them in human tactics. The Varani proved to be fierce warriors when fighting to reclaim what they had lost. But war always has a price, and humanity was learning that price in blood. Captain Emma Rodriguez's carrier group engaged a Krell super dreadnought at the Battle of Carina Rift. The enemy ship was 4 kilometers long, covered in weapons, and protected by shields that seemed impossible to break. Emma's fighter squadrons made attack run after attack run, dodging fire that could vaporize them in an instant. 26 fighters were lost before the enemy shields finally collapsed. Lieutenant Chris Baker led the final assault, his squadron diving straight at the super dreadnought's reactor core. His fighter took a direct hit as he released his payload. The young pilot who had grinned before every mission ejected, but his life support system was damaged. Rescue ships reached his pod 14 minutes later. It was 13 minutes too late. The memorial service was held aboard the Liberty. Hundreds of crew members gathered as Emma delivered the eulogy. Tears streamed down her face as she spoke about the young man who had become like a brother to her. "Chris died doing what humans do best," she said, her voice breaking. "Fighting impossible odds to protect those who cannot protect themselves. He knew the risks. He flew anyway. That is what makes us human." Ground combat was even worse. General Ryan Webb's Marines faced brutal fighting on Krell colony worlds. The planet Draken Prime became a nightmare of urban warfare as human soldiers fought through fortified positions block by block. Sergeant Eric Miles led his squad through 36 hours of continuous combat. They cleared bunkers, destroyed enemy positions, and held defensive lines against waves of Krell soldiers. Eric personally destroyed 4 enemy bunkers with explosive charges, each time running through fire that should have killed him. When shrapnel from a Krell grenade tore through both his legs, Eric refused evacuation. He set up his heavy weapon in a doorway and kept firing, holding the position until his entire squad was safely behind him. Only then did he allow medics to carry him away. The Krell, desperate and increasingly vicious, tried biological warfare. They released a genetic plague on New Harmony, a human colony world designed to target human DNA specifically. Director Amy Chen's intelligence network detected the attack just in time. The population was evacuated in a massive operation that saved 2 million lives. The counter-response was immediate. Human bombers reduced the Krell biological warfare facility to a crater filled with molten rock. President Helen Carter appeared on broadcasts across human space, her face grim. "The Krell have crossed a line. There are no lines left to cross. We will not stop until they are finished." As casualty reports mounted, Carter addressed Earth's population. 20,000 humans dead, 60,000 wounded. Numbers that seemed impossible just a year ago. But the strategic situation was clear. The Krell Dominion was collapsing. 20 systems liberated. 50,000 prisoners taken. Krell military capacity reduced by 60%. "We are winning," Carter said, standing in front of the assembled media. But victory is not free. Every name on the casualty list represents someone's child, parent, friend, lover. We honor their sacrifice by finishing what we started. We owe them that much. The Galactic Council watched these events with growing concern. The war they had dismissed as impossible was now the dominant reality of galactic politics. Species that had ignored Earth for decades suddenly wanted formal relations. Trade delegations arrived at human space stations. Diplomatic requests flooded Earth's government offices. The Thaxian ambassador, humbled by what he had seen, requested a private meeting with Ambassador Lisa Grant. He came to her office on Geneva Station, his multiple arms held in a gesture of respect and apology. "I was wrong," he said simply. "I dismissed your people as young and inexperienced. I did not understand that youth can bring fresh perspective and strength. I apologize." Lisa accepted the apology gracefully. The council system failed because it relied on unanimous agreement. That gave bullies like the Krell veto power over justice. It has to change. She attended a full council session for the first time in months. The chamber fell silent as she entered. She walked to the central platform and addressed the assembled representatives. "We did not want to be conquerors," Lisa said, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast space. "We wanted to be partners. You chose silence while innocents died. So we chose action. When this war ends, Earth will seek peaceful relations with all species. But understand this, we will never again wait for permission to do what is right." The speech resonated across the galaxy. Dozens of species, inspired by human resolve, began their own resistance movements against oppressive regimes. The galactic order, stable for thousands of years, was changing. And humanity was driving that change. Meanwhile, Admiral Stone's central fleet reached the edge of Krell home space. Intelligence reports painted a grim picture. The Krell had fortified their home system with everything they had left. Thousands of defense platforms, minefields spanning millions of kilometers, automated weapon satellites programmed to fire until destroyed. Stone gathered his command staff in the flagship's briefing room. The tactical hologram showed the Krell defenses in red. There were so many red markers it looked like the system was bleeding. "This will be costly," Stone said, not trying to soften the human armada arrived at Drakthor in 3 waves, each dropping out of faster-than-light travel from a different direction. It was a classic envelope maneuver designed to split enemy defenses and create confusion. Admiral Stone's command carrier Sovereign led the first wave. 6 dreadnoughts and 40 supporting warships materialized at the edge of the system. The Krell automated defenses reacted instantly. Thousands of missiles launched. Energy beams lashed out across empty space. Space itself seemed to catch fire. Human point defense systems worked at maximum capacity. Lasers tracked and destroyed incoming missiles. Railguns fired streams of small projectiles that created clouds of shrapnel, detonating warheads before they reached the fleet. Still, some got through. 3 cruisers took damage. 1 destroyer's shields failed completely, and the ship took a missile to the engine section. It limped out of formation, venting atmosphere. Admiral Ben Crawford's Northern Fleet arrived next, dropping dangerously close to Drakthor's primary planet. His ships immediately engaged the heavy defense platforms orbiting the world. Massive structures, each one the size of a small moon, bristling with weapons. The railgun exchanges turned space into a light show of destruction. Tungsten slugs and plasma bolts crossed paths, each one capable of destroying a city. The Southern Fleet, commanded by Captain Jake Morrison after recent promotions, reshuffled the command structure, completed the envelope. Jake's ships moved to cut off any retreat and engage the Krell Reserve Fleet stationed in the outer system. 3 dozen Krell battleships burned toward the human forces, their captains screaming war cries across open channels. The Battle of Drakthor was the largest space engagement in recorded galactic history. Over 400 ships fighting across a volume of space that would take light hours to cross. Every weapon humanity had developed was being used. Every tactical doctrine was being tested. And every crew member knew they were fighting for the future. General Paul Henderson's Marines prepared for the ground assault. 200 dropships, ugly and functional, loaded with soldiers in powered armor. The plan was audacious, maybe insane. They would land during the space battle, targeting key installations while the Krell were focused on the fleet. Sergeant Helen Park checked her squad one final time. 12 Marines, all veterans of at least a dozen battles. They had fought together so long they could communicate with gestures. They were family, and they were about to drop into the most heavily defended planet in the galaxy. The dropships burned through Drakthor's atmosphere like meteors. Krell ground defenses opened fire, filling the sky with tracers and missiles. 3 dropships were hit and spun out of control, crashing in balls of fire. The rest kept coming. Helen's ship hit the ground hard, ramps dropping before they fully stopped. She led her squad out, weapons up, scanning for threats. They were outside the Krell Supreme Command bunker, a fortress designed to survive orbital bombardment. The walls were reinforced with battle-grade alloys. The doors were 3 meters thick. Breaching charges, Helen ordered. Her demo expert, Corporal Luis Garcia, placed shaped charges around the outer door. The explosion was deafening even through their helmet protection. The door, tons of reinforced metal, buckled inward. Helen's squad poured through the gap. The corridor beyond was filled with automated defenses and elite Krell guards. The fighting was vicious and personal. Helen shot 3 Krell soldiers in quick succession, her rifle firing in controlled bursts. Luis took a plasma bolt to the shoulder, his armor smoking, but he kept moving. The squad advanced meter by meter, leaving bodies behind them. In orbit, Captain Emma Rodriguez coordinated the fighter screen protecting the dropships. Her pilots intercepted Krell atmospheric fighters trying to reach the vulnerable transports. The dogfighting was intense, craft weaving through each other at speeds that would kill unaugmented pilots. Lieutenant Ryan Lopez spotted a formation of Krell bombers heading for the landing zones. His squadron intercepted, destroying 4 bombers but losing 3 fighters. Ryan's own craft took damage, his right engine failing, but he managed to limp back to the carrier. Admiral Stone watched the battle unfold from Sovereign's command center. Tactical displays showed a chaotic swirl of ships, weapons fire, and explosions. The Krell were fighting with desperate fury, but human coordination and technology were proving superior. Slowly, methodically, the defenses were being crushed. A Krell defense platform scored a direct hit on the dreadnought Defiance. The massive ship's shields failed, and railgun fire tore through its armor. Secondary explosions rippled along its hull. Admiral Stone watched grimly as the casualty reports came in. 300 personnel dead in an instant. But Defiance kept fighting, its remaining weapons still firing even as damage control teams fought fires throughout the ship. 12 hours into the battle, the Krell orbital defenses began to crumble. The platforms were destroyed or disabled. The automated satellites, their programming too rigid to adapt, were systematically neutralized by human electronic warfare. The reserve fleet was scattered, individual ships hunted down by human pursuit groups. On the surface, Sergeant Helen Park's team reached the final door to the Krell command bunker. Behind it were the Dominion's ruling council, 7 ancient warlords who had led their species for 3 centuries. Helen placed the last of their breaching charges, stood back, and triggered the detonation. The door exploded inward. Helen's squad rushed through, weapons ready. The chamber beyond was vast, designed to intimidate. At the center stood the 7 Krell warlords, each one massive and armored, surrounded by their personal guards. "Surrender," Helen shouted. "The battle is over. Your fleet is destroyed. Surrender and you will be treated according to the laws of war." The eldest warlord, his scales scarred from 1,000 battles, laughed. It was a terrible sound, full of hatred and contempt. "Krell do not surrender," he said in heavily accented human speech. "Krell do not beg for mercy. We die, as we lived, in glory." He triggered something in his armor. Helen realized what was happening and dove for cover, screaming at her squad to do the same. The warlords detonated suicide charges, preferring death to capture. The explosion collapsed part of the chamber, killing 2 of Helen's Marines and burying the rest in rubble. Luis dug Helen out, her armor cracked but still functional. They pulled themselves from the wreckage and looked at what remained of the Krell leadership. Nothing but scattered fragments. The warlords had chosen their end. General Henderson received the report from orbit. The Krell leadership was dead, eliminated by their own choice rather than face justice. It was fitting, in a terrible way. A species that built its empire on conquest could not accept defeat. Admiral Stone broadcast to the remaining Krell forces. "Your leaders are dead. Your fleet is destroyed. Your defenses are breached. Further resistance is pointless. Surrender now, and you will be treated according to the laws of war. Continue fighting, and you will share your leader's fate." Across the system, Krell ships began powering down their weapons. Krell soldiers laid down their arms. Some fought to the death, but most chose survival. The war, for all practical purposes, was over. The cost had been high. Human casualties in the Battle of Drakthor alone, exceeded 5,000 dead and twice that many wounded. 15 ships were destroyed, including the dreadnought Defiance, which finally succumbed to its damage and broke apart. But the Krell Dominion was finished. Their home system was occupied. Their leadership was dead. Their military was shattered. The species that had conquered 47 civilizations in 2 years had been broken in 6 months by the young race they had dismissed as weak and soft. 6 months after the Battle of Drakthor, the galaxy looked different. Captain Emma Rodriguez, now promoted to Rear Admiral, oversaw the occupation and reconstruction of former Krell space. It was unglamorous work, nothing like the glory of space battles. But it was perhaps more important. Turning military victory into lasting peace required patience, diplomacy, and genuine care for the people they had liberated. Emma worked with representatives from dozens of freed species to establish provisional governments. She ensured power plants were rebuilt, water treatment facilities restored, schools reopened. The work was slow and frustrating, but she remembered why they had fought this war. For people. For the innocent who had suffered under Krell tyranny. The Varani proposed a memorial to the humans who had died fighting for their freedom. Emma attended the dedication ceremony on the Varani homeworld, standing beside Elder Kessa as they unveiled the monument. It was a simple black wall, polished to a mirror shine, with 23,000 names engraved in the stone. Every human casualty from the war. Kessa spoke to the assembled crowd, her voice carrying across the plaza. When our leaders failed us, when the council abandoned us, humanity spoke 5 words that changed our fate. Fine, we'll do it ourselves. They did not wait for permission. They did not ask if it was convenient. They saw injustice and they acted. Emma touched the wall gently, her fingers tracing names she recognized. Lieutenant Chris Baker, who had died at Carina Rift. Corporal Sarah Mitchell, killed in ground combat on Draken Prime. Commander Alex Turner, who had gone down with his ship at Proxima Junction. So many names, so many lives. On Earth, the returning fleet received a hero's welcome. Millions lined the streets of major cities as Marines marched in parade formation. Admiral Stone, Admiral Crawford, and the other senior commanders accepted medals from President Carter in a ceremony broadcast across human space. But the real ceremony, the one that mattered most to the soldiers, happened at Arlington. The memorial wall there had been expanded to hold all the names from the war. Jake Morrison stood before it, his dress uniform perfect, his face showing the weight of everything he had experienced. A young girl approached, maybe 7 years old, holding her mother's hand. She looked up at Jake's uniform, eyes wide with curiosity and something like awe. "Mister, are you one of the space soldiers who fought the bad aliens?" she asked. Jake knelt down to her level, managing a small smile. "I am. My teacher says you saved people, lots of people." "We did our best," Jake said quietly. "Sometimes that's all anyone can do." The girl thought about this with the seriousness only children can manage. Then she said simply, "Thank you for doing it yourself when nobody else would." Jake felt something break inside him. Not painfully, but like a dam releasing pressure. That was exactly it. That was what they had done. He thanked the girl, stood up, and watched her walk away with her mother. The Galactic Council convened under new rules. The expanded council now had representatives from 60 species, including several whose worlds had been liberated by human forces. The old system of requiring unanimous votes for action was gone. Now, a 3/4 majority could authorize military intervention against aggression. Ambassador Lisa Grant represented Earth at the first session under the new charter. She was no longer alone or dismissed. Representatives from across the galaxy listened when she spoke, because they had seen what happened when humans were ignored. The first major proposal was to establish a permanent peacekeeping force. Ships and soldiers from multiple species trained to respond rapidly to future threats. The command structure, by unanimous vote, was placed under joint Earth-Varani leadership. The galaxy trusted humanity because humanity had proven it fought not for conquest, but for justice. Lisa rose to address the council, her words carefully chosen. "We fought a war that should never have been necessary. We paid a price that should never have been demanded. But from that sacrifice, we have built something better. A galaxy where aggression is met with action, where the strong protect the weak, where no species stands alone against tyranny. She paused, letting the words settle. Earth does not seek to rule this council or dominate this galaxy. But understand this. We will never again allow bureaucracy and cowardice to masquerade as diplomacy. The next time evil rises, we will act. And we invite all species of good conscience to stand with us. The chamber erupted in applause. It was a sound that would have been impossible a year ago. Back on Earth, President Helen Carter prepared to leave office. Her term was ending, and her successor would inherit a changed world. Earth was no longer isolated or peripheral. Human ships patrolled trade routes across the galaxy. Human engineers helped rebuild devastated worlds. Human diplomats negotiated treaties that actually meant something. Carter reviewed the final reports in her office beneath Geneva. The war had cost 23,000 lives and nearly bankrupted Earth's economy. But the alternative, doing nothing while billions suffered, would have been infinitely worse. History would judge whether she had made the right choice. She believed she had. Admiral Stone retired from active service, handing command to the next generation. He gave his final address to the assembled fleet at Luna Station, looking out at the young faces who would carry humanity's banner forward. "We fought a war," Stone said simply. "We won that war. But remember why we fought. Not for glory or territory or power. We fought because it was right. Never forget that. The moment we fight for any other reason, we become the thing we destroyed." The assembled officers saluted. They understood. Humanity's strength came not from its weapons or technology, but from its willingness to act on principles, even when action was difficult and costly. General Ryan Webb established a training academy on Mars for the new Galactic Peacekeeping Force. Officers from dozens of species came to learn human tactics, strategy, and doctrine. But more importantly, they learned human values. The idea that strength should protect the weak, that power comes with responsibility, that some things are worth fighting for. Colonel Dan Harper, working with Virani and other freed species, created the Galactic Defense Initiative, a volunteer organization dedicated to helping worlds defend themselves against aggression. Human advisors trained local forces, provided equipment, and shared knowledge. The goal was not to create dependence, but to ensure that what happened to the Virani never happened again. Captain Emma Rodriguez, in her new role as Reconstruction Coordinator, met with a group of young Krell survivors. The generation born after the war, who had grown up in occupied territory, learning about their species' crimes and the price paid for them. They asked her questions about humans, about Earth, about why humanity had fought. "We fought because we had to," Emma told them honestly. "Your leadership committed terrible crimes, but you are not your leadership. You can choose to be different. That is what we believe. That people can change. That the future does not have to repeat the past." One young Krell, barely an adult, asked the question that haunted many of his generation. "Will you punish us forever for what our ancestors did?" Emma shook her head. "No. We will hold those responsible accountable. But you have a choice. You can rebuild. You can be better. That is all we ask." The Krell War trials proceeded in neutral territory, overseen by judges from multiple species. The convicted commanders faced justice for their crimes, but ordinary soldiers who had surrendered were released after testimony and rehabilitation programs. Humanity believed in justice, not vengeance. On the anniversary of the Battle of Drakthor, people across human space observed a minute of silence. Not in celebration of victory, but in memory of those who had not returned. In homes and schools, on ships and stations, humans stopped whatever they were doing and remembered. Jake Morrison stood on Earth, looking up at the night sky. Somewhere up there, the memorial walls bore the names of friends and comrades. Somewhere up there, the galaxy continued to change because humans had decided to act. He thought about the young girl at Arlington, thanking him for doing what needed doing. That was humanity in a phrase. When faced with injustice, when confronted with evil, when told that action was impossible or impractical or politically difficult, humans said 5 simple words. "Fine, we'll do it ourselves." And they meant it. With everything they had, with every resource they could muster, with a determination that bordered on stubbornness, humans acted. Not perfectly, not without cost, but they acted. The galaxy was better for it. 47 civilizations were rebuilding. Billions of beings lived in freedom because humans had refused to accept the status quo. The Council had teeth now, able to respond to threats before they consumed the innocent. But Jake knew the real lesson was simpler. When good people see evil and do nothing, evil wins. When good people decide to act, despite the cost and the difficulty and the opposition, everything changes. Humanity had acted. The galaxy had changed. And every species that valued freedom and justice knew that humans would act again if needed. Not because they wanted war, but because they understood that peace without the will to defend it was just surrender in slow motion. The stars shone above, and among them human ships stood watch. Ready, vigilant. Prepared to do what needed doing, whatever the cost, because that was what humans did when they said they would handle things themselves. They followed through. Every single time. And the galaxy was learning to be grateful for that stubbornness, that refusal to accept injustice, that determination to make things right even when everyone else said it was impossible. The age of empty words had ended. The age of human action had begun. And the future was brighter because of it. President Helen Carter appeared before the Galactic Council via hologram. The chamber was silent as she spoke, her words carrying the weight of humanity's victory and the memory of its cost. "The Krell Dominion is dissolved," she announced. "The occupied worlds are free. Prisoners of war will be tried for their crimes. Earth claims no territory. We seek no tribute. We demand no submission from any species in this galaxy. We fought because it was necessary. We won because we had no choice. And now we seek peace, on our terms." Ambassador Lisa Grant presented Earth's proposal for a new galactic order. A mutual defense pact with teeth. A binding treaty that required action against aggression, not just words. A system of collective security backed by the credible threat of force. The Council debated for 3 days. In the end, the vote was nearly unanimous. The galaxy had seen what happened when evil went unchecked. They had also seen what happened when humans said they would handle things themselves. A new era was beginning, built on the graves of those who had died to make it possible. Truth. Some of us will not survive, but there is no alternative. As long as the Krell homeworld stands, the war continues. As long as the war continues, people die. He looked at each officer in turn. These people had fought beside him for months. They had become more than subordinates. They were family, bound together by shared danger and shared purpose. "In 48 hours, we jump to Drakthor," Stone continued. "We finish this. For every species the Krell destroyed, for every human who gave their life, we end them. Not with cruelty or hatred, but with absolute professional competence. That is what humans do when we commit to something." Across the fleet, crews prepared. Weapons were loaded and tested. Armor was checked for damage. Engineers made final repairs. Pilots ran simulations. Marines sharpened their skills in combat drills, and in the quiet moments, many of them wrote letters home, just in case. The final battle was coming, and everyone knew it would determine the future of the galaxy. "For our operations," she said, her voice cutting through the noise, "we will continue this war until the Krell Dominion is completely dismantled. Anyone who interferes will be treated as a hostile combatant. This council is dismissed." Her hologram winked out, leaving the assembly in chaos. On Earth, President Helen Carter addressed the Solar Congress. The secret was out now. The war was public. Every human in the solar system knew that their military was fighting across the galaxy. Carter stood before the assembled representatives and spoke with quiet conviction. "We did not want this war, but when the galaxy refused to act, we accepted the burden. We will see this through to the end, whatever it costs." The Congress voted. The decision was unanimous. Earth was officially at war with the Krell Dominion. No more secret operations. No more hiding. Humanity had shown its strength, and now there would be no turning back until victory was complete. They were tired, having flown dozens of missions over the past 3 weeks. but they were also proud. They had hurt the enemy badly, and not one of them had doubts about what they were doing. New orders, Emma told them simply. We're going loud. Full fleet engagement against a Krell staging area. This is what we've been preparing for. Chris Baker grinned. About time we stopped sneaking around. Kate Sullivan nodded agreement. Let's show them what humans can really do. The fleet began to gather at a secret rendezvous point. 140 warships, the largest concentration of human military power ever assembled. The crews prepared for battle, checking weapons and running system diagnostics. They knew the next fight would be different. The next fight would announce to the entire galaxy that Earth was at war. And when that announcement came, there would be no doubt about the outcome. Rel power. Vex began planning his next conquest. There was a cluster of mining worlds in the Andara sector. Their people were soft, unprepared for war. They would fall easily, adding more resources to fuel the Krell war machine. He did not know that human warships were already moving into position. He did not know that his forces were being watched by stealth ships his sensors could not detect. He did not know that everything was about to change. The war had not officially started yet. But in the quiet movements of human fleets, in the grim determination of human soldiers, in the cold anger of human commanders, the war had already begun. The galaxy was about to learn a simple truth. When humans said, "Fine, we'll do it ourselves," they meant it. And they had the weapons, the will, and the fury to back up those words with action.